Welcome to YSM Conversations, a gathering place for women who sense something deeper is calling. Together, we believe that the most profound adventures begin within, and that when women gather in deep conversation, something ancient and necessary awakens.
Open the door to a new conversation through generative listening, weaving together generations of wisdom and listening beyond the ears to restore the intelligence your body has always carried and integrate soulfulness into the adventure of your life. This is restoring and connecting to the deeper current running beneath it all.
We are YSM Conversations. Welcome home. Welcome back into the conversation. Here's a little of where we left off. Once we have that belonging within ourselves, then we belong everywhere. The wholeness is within, and the belonging is within, and the separation dissolves. And we continue.
I'm curious to know the vision of what this wholeness community might look like. That's part one. Hang tight with me. Part two is this, it's still in the otherness and how the glue of the web can be used to help us supported back into wholeness. There's so much energy up right now about what it means to be other.
Really interesting questions, and there's so much that we could dive into. I will share the two very strong images that came to me from those images are nature and gravity. Nature, what does it look like? And the quote that brought me to nature, the original quote is, "Any significantly advanced technology will be indistinguishable from magic." Someone came along later and revised that and said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from nature, not magic." So nature feels like a return to wholeness through nature and through inspiration of how nature works and moves through cycles and from wholeness. Concretely, I don't know what that looks like. And nature feels like it holds the answer for us.
Being in relationship with nature, being our nature,
Learning from nature and allowing nature to teach us and show us what that unity looks like. The second question was how to use the glue or the collective to bring us back together from that separation and othering into wholeness. And the answer that I had was gravity. And the image that came through was a gravity well in space where there's this big lump of mass and gravity bends, which allows things to then come together. Like if you have a bed sheet and there's a bunch of different balls around the edges, and then you put a big ball in the middle, what happens to the balls around the edges? They all come together.
to the center ball.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what that means concretely. And that was the image that came through.
There's something in me that says that return to wholeness is the return to the embodiment of nature within us, that we have taken the puzzle piece out and put ourselves over here, and the puzzle nature is over here. And we've pulled ourselves out of it, away from it somehow, even though that's really not possible, because just because we're over here, we're still in it, but we think we're no longer. We think we've chosen to do that, or somehow it was chosen for us, that we have this longing that's coming up in my system to say, oh, but if we could collectively come back to being in relationship through nature, that's fundamentally our way back into connectivity, is what I hear you saying. And that gravity, if whatever that ball is that takes on the gravitational pull, what's that? How do we get in touch with that?
Yeah. And as you're talking about it, it's obvious. As beings on this planet experience gravity for one reason and one reason only. And it is because our planet is that ball. it is always pulling us all back towards the center, its center. And maybe it's that separation from nature, the I'm above nature because I'm a human mentality that we need to work on, that just reminds us that we are already within, we are already coming together. Again, it's that the divine comedy, or you used another term for it in our previous series of it's already here. You don't have to look for it. It's here.
Even when you said the planet is that big ball, in my mind, it was the source of everything, which the planet is an expression of that. So really, ultimately, it's that source. And that's what we're returning to. And that seems to be, I mean, that's the nature of the book, of our origin story, of remembering who we are within the whole of what we express from. So I found that interesting that you're saying planet and I'm saying source, and that's what that is. Then it becomes this next for us of that return to nature. It's another community that I'm connected to. There are people who are working on behalf of nature as a capital N nature and in a physical way on the planet of restoring the sovereignty of water, of trees, and that we as humans interacting with these various beings on the planet, these various aspects of sovereignty, if we are in right relationship to nature, we will make decisions in accordance to what gives them life and has them exist as whole, as we take care of what gives human life on this planet. So there is definitely movement towards this. I think it was in UK that I was reading, they're actually giving water its own rights, just as we have our Bill of Rights in the United States for humans by how our government will interact with us. They're giving rights back to the waters. Maybe we're seeing the beginning of access forming.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love the giving water its own rights and giving, ooh, I don't even want to say giving nature back its sovereignty because we don't have the power to give nature its sovereignty back. Acknowledging sovereignty of nature. I love that that's the conversation that we're leaning into because for a long time I've been sitting with this feeling or sitting with this question of how much of conservation that humans do and preservation that humans do is actually supportive of nature's sovereignty versus humans trying to feel better about what we've done to the planet. And what's the line? Because I was watching a nature documentary and the image that keeps sticking with me is trying to create a conservation area for rhinos. And so part of the way that they did it was they set up the conservation area that has the boundaries. Number one, boundaries for a wild animal. And then the way that they got the rhino there that they showed us was that they flew around in a helicopter to find them. And then they tranquilized one when they found it. And then to relocate it, they tied its legs together and its front legs together and its back legs together, airlifted it upside down, however far away, to the relocation center for conservation, and then dropped it off, let it come to. And having the background that I do in trauma informed training and the nervous system, yes, the rhino is in a safe space. Yes, it is healthy biologically. But what are the leftover effects of the tranquilizer, of that flight? Even if it wasn't conscious, its body was there and its body was doing something during that flight. And then what are the lines between, again, what's actually good for nature and nature's sovereignty versus what humans are doing just because we feel guilty?
That brings up a lot for me. And I go back to the puzzle metaphor, pulling this puzzle piece out of the puzzle and putting it over here because we believe it's going to be better over here. So fundamentally, what you're saying is you've pulled this rhino out of what it knows, what it's inherently connected to, and separated it from that and put it into the community that you have created. And is that respecting the sovereign nature of the rhino? Are we thinking about the whole in doing that?
And if we continue with the puzzle metaphor within the rhino experience, what would it look like instead of moving one puzzle piece from its little collective over here to another area within the bounds of what we believe or understand or control, and instead bringing them together for that whole? What would that look like? Peace is what comes to me, especially from our conversation before we dived into recording. Peace being an entryway to wholeness, an access point to wholeness. PEACE.
Now, I feel the energy of our conversation dropping in to a deeper unknown feeling of unresolvability. If we're seeing this one piece of a rhino being pulled out, how is that mirrored in our collective human communities? I want to go back to what you're saying about nature is that access point that takes us towards our wholeness. It's so much more than what we started with. We've moved beyond the border of the puzzle right now to a new threshold. What are the possibilities here? And that generative listening that happens when we do sit with one another and listen for the deeper story, the deeper knowing. I'm letting myself feel around in this moment without having a clear discernment yet. So pause and pass it over.
The question that you asked on how do we learn from the rhinoceros story and what do we take away from it into human nature and into what we are able to change or evolve. And go back to my trauma informed training, especially with youth in juvenile hall or at risk and in the system, where that sovereignty is a huge part of what we do, teaching the tools to listen deeply, to first to regulate, which then allows the spaciousness and the stillness to listen deeply to what the deeper currents are rather than to what the patterning is, the shoulds, the conditioning, and honoring that every being, whether it's a person, whether it's a rhinoceros, whether it's a tree, is the expert of their own life. And it is not up to any other being to determine what is best for that being. Of course, if you have kids and you're responsible for a 4-month-old, then yeah, you're making the decisions on what the best way is for that being. We need to work on letting go of that control because I think it does come down to this. I know best. I want control in this situation, that we need to rewire for ourselves and then get in touch with nature and generative listening using the tools that Victoria and I have gone into deeply in previous series so that we can be in that space of generative listening and make a choice.
Even with babies, even with toddlers, even with puppy dogs, even their innate wisdom is present.
Yeah.
They will cry, they will express through their bodies from their sovereign being what is called upon. And we, as their caretakers for X amount of time, are to be in our own sovereign being, listening for the need that they're expressing, animal, human, water, tree. And that's really what I fundamentally heard when you said nature is the access point for that collective new vision. It comes back to every aspect that has its natural order. And the of leads into, maybe this is another conversation, but what the generative listening to the nature calls forth the next response. I don't know what that is in this moment, but it feels like that may unlock the key to something new for how we form the next iteration of us as a people in collective nature with the whole of the planet and its beings. Do you get any pings of what's the next pillar beyond generative listening?
Beyond generative listening. Oh, whoa.
What does generative listening generate?
I'm going back to our introduction of something genuinely new. Magic.
But magic has been around for eons.
That's true. I guess it's what magic generates because I'm not purposefully skirting around the question. I'm coming back to the claim that I always make that what the universe has in store for us is so much more magical than what we could have dreamt up ourselves. And so the question of what does generative listening generate leads into that something actually new that I don't even have a concept of in my human tiny brain. And that is an expression of magic. And thank you for saying that about regardless of what age you are, what age any being is, that sovereign nature shines through. Because as I was making those comments earlier, I was like, that's not actually fully true in terms of making all the decisions for that little being.
You know what? I was hearing the song, The Impossible Dream. It feels to me like Source is wanting us to recover what we stand upon for reaching what seems to be the impossible dream that we hold in our hearts. Sit with what just moved through. We'll meet you in the next one. Thank you for diving deep with us into generative listening. If this episode stirred something in you, subscribe to keep restoring with us. And if someone came to mind while you were in your own generative listening, share this episode with them. Because when women gather, something ancient and necessary awakens.
We are YSM Conversations, connecting back to the deeper currents on behalf of seeding our next collective wholeness.